Okay, this is part 2 of histology. Now, you do on Schoology or as paper copies, you have pictures of the different tissue types. You should use those, have them in your notebook, taped in, so you can use them to study and help you identify the tissues. Okay, so we're on connective tissue types. The first type is areolar tissue, which is also called loose tissue. And you can see that that name makes sense as the tissue is kind of suspended in this matrix. You can see different fibers and cells in there, all suspended in an airy matrix. It surrounds blood vessels, nerves, muscles, and other organs, and connects the skin to the underlying muscle. Then we have adipose tissue, which is basically just fat. It contains adipocytes, which are the large fat cells. So all of these white cells are adipocytes, okay? The inner section of it is just fat, okay? Now, of course, fat is going to cushion, insulate, okay, store materials to be used as energy later. It's found beneath the skin, even behind the eyeballs, around the kidneys and the heart. Next, we have cartilage. You can see the matrix of the cartilage example is more rigid than the areolar tissue. Okay, the names of the cells, you can see the cells with their nuclei, like that's a cell. They're called chondrocytes. And cartilage has a poor blood supply due to that rigid matrix. Okay, this example is called hyaline cartilage. There's several different types of cartilage, but they all have these chondrocytes. Okay, next up is bone. Of course, bone has a very solid matrix because it supports and protects our body. Okay, inside the bone actually is where the blood cells are formed. Okay, and then bone, of course, is attachment for the muscles. And then the cells found within bone, they're called osteocytes. Okay. Now, osteocytes, you can see it is labeled here, but these pictures aren't zoomed in quite close enough to really get a good look at them. But here we have an example of an osteocyte. Okay, next up is blood. Blood is suspended in a fluid matrix, and that's your plasma. It has red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Okay, the red blood cells, you can see here. The white blood cells are these ones that are stained purple. Okay, they're the large cells. You can see there's much more red blood cells than white blood cells. And platelets are kind of the smaller parts that you see in the images. Okay, platelets help with blood clotting. Now, once we get into talking about blood and the circulatory system, we will talk more specifically about this. So the blood is really important for transportation of materials, of course, oxygen and carbon dioxide and other nutrients as well. It's great for our immune defense. White blood cells really help out with that, and involved in blood clotting with our platelets. Of course, it's located throughout the body, in your blood vessels, and in the heart. Next up is muscle tissue. So general characteristics of our 3 types of muscle tissue. First, we have skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is probably what you think of when you think of muscle. It's the muscle that is involved in movement, so it's attached to the bones. Now, skeletal muscle has striations, or it's striated, which I'll show in this picture. Now, you can see these vertical lines that run on the muscle. Those are the striations. It is voluntary, meaning that you think about moving that muscle and you can purposely move it on your own. Okay, and then smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is found in walls of organs and blood vessels. So for example, your esophagus is smooth muscle. It's also found under the skin, and then this muscle is involuntary. So you don't think about contracting this muscle, you don't think about contracting the esophagus to try to move food down to the stomach. It is non-striated, so we don't see any lines in it. You can see now this looks pretty, well, smooth. Of course, it doesn't have striations. Cardiac muscle. This is the muscle of the heart, found in the heart wall. Again, it's involuntary. You don't think about your heart beating and that muscle contracting. It does have striations. If we could see this image a little closer, you'd be able to see them. And it contains what's called intercalated discs. Now, these are shown as these vertical little lines. These are the intercalated discs that are between different muscle cells, and they help to move along the message. They help to propagate a signal onto the next muscle. Okay, here's skeletal muscle up close where you can really see those striations. You can see the nuclei, several nuclei per cell. Now note that skeletal muscles are very long muscles. The longer the muscle, the more force that is generated when it contracts. And we need a lot of force when we are moving our muscles because we need to do a lot of work. Okay, smooth muscle. You can see there's one nuclei per cell and then cytoplasm, and there's no striations. It's found in the digestive system and different organs. Cardiac muscle of the heart. Now you can see those striations better in this cartoon than you can in the actual example. You can see that the structure of cardiac muscle is kind of branching. That's one characteristic. Then we have just a single nucleus per cell, so there's the intercalated discs that help move the signal along. Nervous tissue is our last type of tissue. It's found in the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. The cells in the nervous tissue are called the neurons. So, for example, here is one neuron. You can just see this is the cell body of the neuron. It would extend a bit longer here. Okay, and this is a real picture here, what it actually looks like. You can see these branching structures that are called dendrites that help to, kind of similar to an intercalated disc, but they help to move on the signal and sense different things that are, different messages that are coming in. So nervous tissue helps with sensory reception and conduction of nerve impulses. So we would have kind of a line of these neurons, and they would just send the signal along to the next neuron. And that happens, of course, very fast. Now, these are the printouts for you that you can use to help you identify these types of tissues. I hope this was helpful and have a great day.